it's Julian Assange and WikiLeaks that have returned honor to journalism. Julian is a truth teller, and that's what has upset those who continue what Goebbels called the big lie.
Okay, that was, of course, John Pilger at the very top in a photo with Julian Assange. We'll ask him about that. I'm Randy Critical. This is Randy Critical live on the fly with a very special Assange birthday, Assange Countdown to Freedom. Here we go again. We have two of the greatest in their field, the greatest in their field in the music. We have later on Roger Waters, and joining us for, I don't know, the 90th time is the greatest journalist in my lifetime, and that is John Pilger. We are going to get right into it, folks, and go right into John Pilger right after this music that may be banned in the U.S. Any day soon. Right back with John Pilger. Okay, that was Dmitry Shostakovich, a Russian. I'm surprised that he hasn't been banned in this country like Stoli and everybody else that's got a Russian last name. John Pilger joins us. We're going to get right into it. John, thank you for coming back. We've done this so many times. The last time we spoke was in April, but there have been a number of events that have transpired since then that I wanted to catch up with you on. So welcome back.
Thank you, Randy. Very good to be back. And such an honorable show this. I said in those few words at the beginning that Julian had returned honor to journalism. I mean, in so many ways, your program, and I'm not flattering, has returned a great deal of honor to straightforward broadcasting by Countdown to Freedom. Extraordinary series.
You know, John, we've been doing this for so long. The first time I had you on was in 2016, like 4 or 5 times, and we covered coming war on China and so many other issues, and Julian Assange back then. And then we began this April 11, 2017 series. And here we are 5.5 years later. And it seems grimmer than ever.
Well, yes, I was thinking as you were saying Julian's birthday coming up. I remember his birthday when I first met him, and that was back in 2010. That's over a decade ago. That's getting on for 12 years ago. And Julian has been confined, imprisoned in various forms since then. It really is just one of the outrages. I don't think we can ever run out of ways to express our outrage at what has happened to Julian. But
4 years. 4 years. This is his 4th birthday in that dank, squalid, 1-floor version of the Tower of London, this torture chamber called Belmarsh. It makes me sick thinking about it, particularly on his birthday.
Yeah, on his birthday, but he's gone through so many milestones there. I mean, perhaps the worst was the other day, the day that the Home Secretary here, Priti Patel, announced that her decision, no surprise, that she intended to go ahead with the extradition of Julian to the United States. They were well prepared at Belmarsh Prison. They strip searched him, and put him in a cell that was bare, no doubt in a crude display of showing some kind of awareness that, that the Julian, this object of unrelenting injustice, might do himself harm. That happened the other day. So uncivilized in every way.
Yeah, that is definitely the third world, or straight fascist treatment of this individual. And I mean, and we're talking about a sensitive, brilliant, humane man who's no harm to anybody.
No. Well, he's harm to liars. Yes, he's very harmful to liars in government who lie to us, who plan wars behind our backs, who conspire behind our backs, who make all sorts of untrue and tendentious statements. He called them out. So I guess he's harmful to them. They fear him. They fear the truth, of course, and he is a truth teller, but they fear him, and that's why they're putting him through this punishment, this persecution.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like this. It's just unbelievable. One man is that much of a danger to their evil ways of doing business. And I'm thinking that there was a man 20 years ago that was in British custody because there was an arrest warrant in Spain, and that is, of course, General Pinochet. You take a look at what he did and the kind of treatment he was afforded while he was awaiting an extradition. Yeah. He was in a mansion the entire time.
Yeah.
And then you look at Julian. You look at Julian and where he's been. I mean, I've been to the trial a couple of times, and how many times have you witnessed him in a box or remotely?
Well, I've witnessed him quite a few times. Sadly, the last time I saw him was when he was so highly medicated and in such distress that the Chief Justice himself announced that Julian would not be called on, called on to attend the proceedings. I thought it was an extraordinary presumption that he was determining whether somebody whose life is at risk here could decide whether they appear in court. But he was saying, no, he can't because of his medication. Well, the medication is clearly having a devastating effect on Julian. Another time in the lower court where the judge Baretza asked Julian to state his name, and he hesitated terribly. He was in a terrible state.
Yeah.
Other times I've seen him strong, resilient. The last time in the Old Bailey, he interrupted the proceedings, asked very relevant questions, and he showed them how strong he was. So he survives.
Let's be honest, what this is all about. It's about, as you have said, it's about embarrassing the U.S., the U.K., and all of these warmongering nations that their business is war. We only have so much time. I always play, when you're on, I always like to play this clip of which definitely is going to be resurrected if he's extradited here many times. And let's just go to this one clip, which is 30 seconds of collateral murder. We'll be right back.
One shoot. Light them all up.
202 traffic, 260.
Come on, fire. Hey, Roger. Keep shoot. Keep shoot.
Bushmaster 2-6, Bushmaster 2-6. We need to move time now.
All right, we just engaged all 8 individuals. Yeah, we got 2 Americans. We're still firing. Roger. Got him.
6 is a 2-6. We'll move, but we got this.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was done.
Bypass.
God damn it, Kyle. Sorry. I hit him.
What can I say? Every time I see that,
I see it, and I've seen it so many times. I'm always shocked, but it is the truth. This is the way the United States conducts its colonial wars, in that indiscriminate, deliberate, murderous attack on civilians, including a couple of media workers, one from Reuters, and their use of their cowardly, euphemistic language. We engage those individuals. They mean they've just murdered them.
right?
When later on, of course, somebody says nice because they've killed a number, well, they believe they've killed a number of people. These colonial wars, the ones I've seen, and my first was Vietnam, are what they call 360-degree wars. 360-degree wars means that you fire all around and you kill everybody that moves. In Vietnam, as in so many other places, free fire zones were about killing everything that moved, burning down villages, collateral damage, which I believe came from there and from the Korean War, which was, of course, simply total war that destroyed everything. And I mean everything. All the cities in North Korea were razed to the ground. This is the way the US fights its wars. And yet we have the spectacle, Randy, as you will have seen, of this warmongering organization, NATO, meeting in Madrid, in almost gloating that it now has provoked Russia to the point where Russia has done what it has done so many times. It's invaded a country. So it is now ready to go to war with Russia by proxy, but still go to war with Russia. That put that against the evidence that Julian revealed, and you understand that so much in our culture, that overworked word, our culture, our political culture, is devoted to warmongering.
You know, as you said, 360-degree return fire war. You interviewed Julian back in 2016. He talked about it at length, that this was just a drop in the bucket, the shooting of the Reuters reporters. And I'm going to play a clip of that interview with Julian from 2016.
Ethan McCord and one of his fellow soldiers who were in that ground unit, they say that they were surprised it was this video that leaked, because there were many, many worse incidences, and this was a sort of everyday occurrence. It's not every day that journalists are killed. Although I did read the statistic that there have been 7 Reuters journalists killed in Baghdad, and all of them were killed by US military fire. But probably the only reason we are talking about this now is because there were 2 journalists there, and they were sort of trackable and Reuters put in a Freedom of Information Act request. Whereas if they weren't journalists, if they were just regular citizens of Baghdad, we wouldn't even be talking about it. The material just would have been buried. There would have been no internal investigation at all, which prompted the eventual leaking.
Well, that's part of an interview you did back in 2016, which won a huge award in Mexico and other places. You can get that entire interview at johnpilger.com. Go to videos and watch it along with 61 great films that you've done over a remarkable, insuperable 60-year career, maybe a longer, maybe you started when you were 17. But that interview, what does it tell you? What did you glean from that?
Well, I gleaned from it that that Julian was in trouble for telling that kind of truth. He wasn't going to be forgiven. That kind of information is intolerable. Those kind of pictures given out to millions of people, they're unacceptable. Julian became an enemy of the state, if you like. He became a threat because this is the truth. I know it's the truth. I've reported a number of wars I've mentioned, and that primitive ruthlessness displayed by that helicopter crew, that murderous ruthlessness, is common. And it was common right throughout Southeast Asia because so much lies at the root of it. It's about racism. It is about people who fly those helicopters knowing they can get away with it. And America has sent its bombers and its helicopters against so many countries in my lifetime, effectively with impunity. No court will ever try them for the crimes which they are obviously committing year after year.
Well, those guys are still at large, and you would think that Eric Holder, there's no statute of limitation against murder like that, and they're still on the loose. I mean, they're running around in this country, the individuals on that gunship. Yeah. So that's like the big flashpoint. There are two flashpoints to me that got him into this, intractable hot water, and that would be first that, and then later on in 2017, which began when he released Vault 7, and then Pompeo went nuts. And you remember this is when he launched his crusade. Let's play that clip.
It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is: a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia. We know this because Assange and his ilk make common cause with dictators today. Yes, they try unsuccessfully to cloak themselves and their actions in the language of liberty and privacy, but in reality, they champion nothing but their own celebrity. Their currency is clickbait, their moral compass non-existent, their mission, personal self-aggrandizement through destruction of Western values.
So you know what happens from there. They start spying on everybody. They come up with this idea of kidnapping and assassinating him. That's all come out. Yet it's had no impact. How big was Vault 7 in your estimation in terms of influencing this, even though he's not charged with it?
Sorry, how big was? Say the question again, right?
How much of an impact did this have, along with the collateral murder in the war logs?
And I think probably the same impact. It was. I just watching Pompeo there with a whole litany of ludicrous lies, that they were in with the Russians, they were hostile television intelligence service, and, make it up. Everything is made up. And But they were so very serious after Vault 7, because Vault 7 really exposed yet again the CIA for what it is, a murderous organization. The church hearings in the 1970s under Senator Frank Church did the same, exposed the lies, it exposed the atrocities caused by the CIA. But this, what Julian did with Vault 7, showed that the CIA is looking over our shoulder, looking into our phones, even our televisions. And he exposed an Orwellian world of Big Brother that we have every right to know. As I say, this was unacceptable. It wasn't long after that, according to the expose published by the Yahoo people, that an attempt was made on Julian's life in London. Certainly during all of this, Pompeo's CIA spied directly on Julian in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And in fact, Pompeo has just been summoned, just the other day subpoenaed to appear before the court in Spain, which has exposed the role of a Spanish company in its work for the CIA. The whole thing from top to bottom is so rotten, but one thing is absolutely certain. In any other case, this would have been thrown out of court.
Right.
Under our system, under our common law system, the United States, the United Kingdom, this would have been thrown out of court. It was enough, the fact that the US spied on Julian, spied on his lawyers, spied on his doctors, threatened him directly, apparently made an attempt on his life. All of this, or even just a part of it, would be enough to expel this from any proper court. And that's why Julian hasn't had a proper court. He has been in a political court.
Right. And that's not to mention the perjured testimony by this child molester, Ziggy, and it doesn't include what the CPS, the Crown Prosecutor Services, did in forcing or strong-arming Marian Nye and the Swedish court to keep this phony investigation of Julian over the situation in Sweden. When it gets it smells. All of that put together, and yet any one of those would be enough to get you off. Any one of those, but it doesn't seem to matter. They're just going through the motions and pretending like there's that this is like some judicial process.
That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Why doesn't it matter? Why doesn't it matter? Because in asking that, I think it forces us to confront the fact that perhaps protest, questioning the law has become redundant for us as a human right. Why doesn't it matter? Why doesn't a case so clearly corrupt? Why is it still going on? Why is there a real danger that Julian will indeed be extradited? An innocent man, a man who's been compromised, or in the words of compromised by some of the most powerful forces in the world, whose case has been compromised, by some of the most powerful forces in the world, or in the words of the former UN reporter for torture, Niels Melzer, a man who was mobbed, that word he used in his report, mobbed by governments, by the media, in its persecution of Julian. All this is clear to us. The evidence is there. It's on film. It's written down. It's virtually inscribed on tablets and handed down to us day after day. And yet Julian remains in a prison worthy of your description, Belmarsh prison, and in grave danger of being extradited to a hellhole in the US.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves, how can this happen in a so-called free society? And I'm not going to draw comparisons, but this is what happens in fascist society. We are not fascist societies, not yet, but the fact that we've come this far, that one man, one publisher, one journalist can be treated in this fashion, tells us a truth we have to confront pretty soon.
Right. We're talking with John Pilger. Randy Pedigo. This is Assange Countdown to Freedom. It is Julian's birthday on July 3rd. You describe in defense of Julian Assange, the book, there's an essay by you in there about being in a room with him, which you did many times, and you likened it to 1984. It was room 101. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, it depends which room. The room in the Ecuadorian embassy, right, where you went, you were being spied on. What we were saying was being listened to. We knew that. Julian wasn't sure where the cameras were. So remember on one occasion, we each had a pad and we wrote our conversation down and passed the pages to each other. But we had to make sure that somebody above us wasn't looking at our pages. The absurdity of this, the criminality of this. And we know now that those who are now, to whom he's being extradited, were doing the spying on him. In Belmarsh, the Julian himself described, when I saw him shortly after he was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy, he described it as something like a scene out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Mm. He was imprisoned in something called healthcare. It wasn't even called the hospital wing, it was called healthcare. It had as much to do with healthcare as the rest of the prison. And there he was put in a cell next to a terribly afflicted person who screamed through the night. He was considered. He was almost as if he was considered mentally ill, that he had to be treated in this manner. This happens in the centre of London, the land of the Magna Carta, the land where the whole idea of justice and common law derived. It is a shame. It's shaming on anybody who stands up for a system that allows such persecution to take place over and over again. And that's every day Julian is suffering this persecution.
You know, I thinking of all of those who gave up their lives fighting fascism, fighting this kind of totalitarian fascism, whatever you want to call it, in World War II, whether those who died in Anzio, who died in North Africa, who died during the Blitz, Battle of London, Dunkirk. Those guys gave up their lives fighting against what is happening right now. Including Roger Waters' father, who died in Anzio. And so what these prosecutors are doing, and everybody up the ladder, they're desecrating the memory and the graves of those people who gave up their lives fighting against what they're practicing now.
Yes. And fascism then was clear. We had all the evidence of Nazi fascism, which had an extraordinary iconography of everything to do with the hideous Hitler cult. We could easily identify fascism. We can't now. It's difficult because the facade of our societies is unchanged. And yet fascism, it can only be fascism that does what it's done to Julian Assange.
Absolutely. John, we only have a few more minutes here. I do want to look at some bright, you may not call them bright because I've seen some of your tweets, particularly I want to talk about the Prime Minister Albanese of Australia. People are pinning their hopes on some past comments by him. Pinning their hopes, and I think that you've kind of thrown some cold water on those statements and hope that we have.
Well, the role of the Australian Prime Minister is actually, or could be, crucial in this, because Australia has only to exercise the diplomatic power that it holds, but doesn't use, of course, to bring its citizen home. I've no doubt about that. But Australia is probably as much a vassal as the United Kingdom to the United States. The new Labour Prime Minister, who so many people believe offers some kind of hope, Anthony Albanese, is at the moment, I think, in Madrid with NATO. What's he doing with NATO? What has the North Atlantic Treaty Organization got to do with Australia? Well, it's an American warmongering organization, and Australia has been integral to America's plans all my lifetime. Now, he's, in other words, yes, to before the election, he said some rather weaselly things like, when asked about Julian, enough is enough. Well, yes, enough is enough. But what are you doing about it, Mr. Albanese? The answer is nothing. And so I'm afraid there's no good news from Julian's own country. As far as I was there recently, there's simply more false hope. And we mustn't allow ourselves to be captured by false hope anymore.
Well, we got to keep fighting, of course, but I read something, I spoke to somebody the other day that said that 75% of the Australian public want Julian back.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Julian is a very understood figure from someone who was smeared for years by the media. Julian has become, in my opinion, a very popular figure in Europe and certainly in his own country. That's the sense, the very real sense I get there. He has support all kinds of people have stopped me in the street when I've been in Australia and said to pass on their solidarity to Julian Assange. I haven't known anything like that. The same thing happens in the UK. But that's different from governments. And when I say we've got to give up false hopes, I mean false hopes about governments that speak weasel words to us, that give us a hope that they will do something when in fact they're deceiving us. That we have to understand.
Absolutely. I read one of your columns about weasel words a couple of years ago, and certainly those are weasel words, that we think he's going to do something. I don't know. But President Obrador, there's another bright light, a little bit of a ray of hope. Does that give you, in Argentina, Christina Kirchner came out and supported Assange. So you have this Obrador. Does that help? He's going to bring it up to Biden at a meeting.
Yes, it does help. It does help. I don't think Mexico would be a place that Julian would want to go. It's be quite a dangerous place. The US has a great deal of influence there. But the offer is very important. I think, and what we must be very clear about this, what is important is our support. Because why are they doing this to Julian? Because they fear Julian. They fear somebody who is not well, who is simply told the truth in a spectacular fashion. Now, there's a similar truth about our support. If it's there in the numbers, if it comes from people like Obrador and others who have influence, all well and good. So it's our support that will, if anything changes, that will be the source of the change. I don't see it at the moment, but I think it's there because our evidence is that governments fear what used to be known as people power. Right. Otherwise, why do they expend so much energy, so much malicious energy in attempting to shut up those like Julian Assange? There's your evidence that it matters.
Well, that was well said. I was going to ask you any parting words. This has been a very quick 40 minutes. I said 30, 40 minutes, but I always cheat with you. Let me just ask you this. Any parting words, that you can convey to my audience and people across the U.S., what they can do from this point going forward?
Stand up and speak up. Speak up. Don't remain quiet. Speak up collectively if you can. Come together. Support the organizations that support Julian. Support his crowdfunding, of course, for the case, but speak up and make sure those in power hear you, and come together and do it in places where you'll be heard and noticed. That's very important. There was once great movements in the United States, anti-war movements, freeze movements, feminist movements. They don't seem to exist anymore, but they had great effect, great impact. A movement similar to that in support of Julian, and I know that there is quite a wide stream of support for Julian in the US, could make a difference. These, again, I say, these politicians, these plastic people like Biden's and Albanese's and Johnson's, or clowns like Johnson, they fear the public. They may give the impression that they will go on regardless, but in the end, they fear the public. So make yourself heard wherever you are.
John Pilger, I appreciate you being honoring us once again. I think over the last 6 years, at least 40 times. And it was very enlightening once again. At johnpilger.com, if you want to get a real education, have your kids go right to the book section and then go to the video section and see what real journalism is, folks. It's the most enlightening. It is what do you call it? The Library of Alexandria. I'm serious when I say that. JohnPilger.com. His work is also, if you're in London, go to the British Library because his films are ensconced there. John, hold on. We're going to say goodbye to you in a minute, but we're going to come right back with Roger Waters. This is Roger with John in London at a rally that you were marching or something, but this is, I wish you were here. And we'll be back with Roger Waters. 1 second.
I wish you were here too. Year after year, running over the same old ground. What have we found? The same old fear. And I wish that you were.
What a wonderful event that was. Roger has done so much for Julian. He is example. Speak up like Roger Waters.
Back in 1972, I woke up one morning and had this big realization. This is it. Here I was thinking I was preparing for something, but I'm not. I just missed the starting gun. My life is happening now. This morning I suddenly thought, fuck me, what if we all missed the starting gun? What if the race is over? This is not a drill.
Okay, that's a promo for an upcoming long tour, cross-country international tour. Roger Waters, This Is Not a Drill, beginning on July 6th, George W. Bush's birthday in Pittsburgh. Roger Waters, thank you for taking time out. I know you're rehearsing right now, but this is a special weekend. It's Julian's birthday, and I knew you would be here.
I'm very happy to be here, Randy.
So let me ask you a question. You're allowing a lot of the Assange supporters to kind of go to these different venues and pass out flyers or, information, get signatures. You continue to do your political activism, even though you're engaged in this monumental effort, which has been postponed.
Yeah. Well, what else do? You get up in the morning and you try, like my mum always exhorted me, you try to figure things out and decide what the right thing to do is and do it. Obviously, within this context, the right thing to do is to try and get the ruling class to remember the reasons why, starting at Runnymede, we developed the rule of law, is to protect citizens from tyranny. Julian Assange is being persecuted by a tyrannical empire, the United States of America, and its poodle acolyte, the United Kingdom. I live in the United States. I'm a citizen of the United Kingdom. So, I have a finger in this pie, and I am disgusted and mortally offended by the fact that they don't give a fuck about the law or the US Constitution or human rights or freedom or liberty or democracy or any of the things that you and I and Julian Assange hold so dear. So it is beyond the most ridiculous kangaroo court charade that any of us have ever seen, and yet it continues to trundle forward. So I don't know what else to say before.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, I've been at this for 6 years myself, and I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, but I keep going regardless, thinking that there's an exit, that he will get off. How do you look at it right now? I mean, you're well aware of what's going on. Are you optimistic?
As far as Julian's concerned, it's hard to be, except that the people's voice is getting louder. The groundswell of opinion in the ranks of those of us who can actually read a book and who ever bother to find out about anything that's going on in the world, rather than just listening to the mainstream media or reading the New York Times, all those things which are just part of the propaganda machine of the tyranny that controls our lives. That number of people is growing, and we are making more noise. And some of the noise that's being made is being made by governments, if you see what I mean. And so it's very, very important to bring pressure on these motherfuckers who are our governments, Boris Johnson and Joe Biden. There's no point in trying to convince them of anything. I've been watching Stella for the last few weeks, and whenever I see anything of her filmed and she's talking about it as events develop, she always makes 100% perfect sense, but she has to repeat the same mantra over and over again. This man is the most important journalist in our lifetimes, Julian Assange. He is one of the most truthful, one of the best men that any of us will ever have the fortune to listen to speak. They've got him banged up. He's been banged up in Belmarsh for over 3 years now. And he is entirely innocent of any crime. This is a tyrannical regime, the US imperial empire, trying to maintain their global hegemony and a global military presence, and they don't want anyone revealing the fact that they are committing war crimes every single day of our lives. And somehow they managed to keep it hushed up. But the only way that they can continue to keep it hushed up is by showing people that if anyone sees an American committing a war crime and tells that truth to the world, they will be killed. Can you get any more tyrannical than that? How much more tyranny do you want to see? He's an innocent man and a great journalist.
Can you believe this is his 4th birthday in a row inside of Belmarsh? I mean, what I call the Tower of London, one floor on the ground floor, that he is ensconced there on his 4th birthday. I mean, what did we celebrate his birthday? I mean, it's like such an odd thing to be doing. But your thoughts about that?
Yeah, of course I can believe it. Of course I can believe it. Because it's transparently fascist behavior on the part of both the US government and the UK government and all the other acolytes, the Macrons and and the leaders of the German Bundestag, and all those people who are just following in the trail of the American imperial war machine, war hate machine, the machine that Eisenhower warned us all about when he made his leaving address, when he ended his presidency. Okay, so yeah, of course I can believe it. Does it make me want to burst into tears or rush out into the street with my teeth gritted and scream into the howling gale of their intransigence and culpability? Yeah, it does. I'm so angry. I'm so angry that I have to live in a world where this bullshit is allowed to happen and go on happening. It's so transparently beyond the pale and beyond all norms that ought to be allowed within a civilized society. And yet they're allowed to get away with it. Why? Because they're very good at controlling the media, particularly the mainstream media. They're trying now to wipe all alternative media off the internet through their colleagues at Google and Facebook and Twitter and all the other platforms who one by one are weeding us out. I would not be surprised to see you disappear off the internet. I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see me disappear off the internet because they're slowly weeding us out one by one. Well, we have to fight back. Fuck them. We will not be weeded out. We are the voice of reason. Randy, you and I and Julian and Stella Assange and all our comrades all over the world have love in our hearts, and we are determined that that love shall prevail and that we will find ourselves at some point down the line in a world that is free of this tyranny. And the first indication of that will be Julian Assange stepping through the gates of Belmarsh prison and going home to Stella and his boys where he belongs. I mean, wow. He's been in isolation for 10 years, having committed no crime except the crime of telling the truth and informing the rest of us that this murderous bullshit that's called American foreign policy is taking place under our noses. And he and the extraordinarily brave Chelsea Manning told us that. You know, that's all they did was...
Yeah, just a couple more questions. I know you're busy. We're almost at the end of the show. I want to ask you, and I asked John this question. He was encouraged somewhat by President Obrador of Mexico's strong statement in support of Assange. Does that give you any optimism? Will it snowball?
It's huge. Everything that's happening now, right now in Central and South America, led by the second round of the presidential election in Colombia on the 19th of June, a couple of weeks away. Oh, how much does that lighten the load? And for the president of Mexico to come out in public and say, this is bullshit and it's wrong. What happened a few weeks ago with them creating another public forum in opposition to the Organization of American States, where they tried to put on their normal charade in, I believe it was in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. Yes. And it was shunned by the rest of the world because it's bullshit. So that, yes, of course, that the Mexican condition, you know, if only we had Jeremy Corbyn, if Jeremy Corbyn hadn't been railroaded out of the race by the Israeli lobby in England, and he was now the Prime Minister of England, he would be standing firm with Julian Assange. In fact, Julian Assange would not be in prison if Jeremy Corbyn was our leader, because Jeremy Corbyn, unlike Boris Johnson, does believe in human rights, does believe in the law, does believe in democracy, does believe in liberty, and does believe in freedom. Boris Johnson believes in none of those things, and neither does Joe Biden. None of them. Wow. So seeing Jeremy Corbyn railroaded was was the other saddest thing that has happened in the last few years. Oh. Assange's freedom will be a turning point, a watershed in this ghastly charade that is probably going to lead to the end of life on this planet, because we cannot afford to have these tyrants in control of the way we organize ourselves. Wow. So please, Biden, don't stop asking for the extradition. Johnson, set him free. Tell the awful, execrable Priti Patel, your disgusting, pathetic, horrible Home Secretary, change her decision. No, Julian Assange will not be extradited to the United States. He will be set free to go home and be with his family where he belongs. Where he settles is entirely up to him. He should be a free citizen of the world to live anywhere he wants. And please, Julian, when you get out, where am I? There I am. Please stop publishing again. We miss you. We need you desperately. If these buggers get away with this comedy, is that a word? I don't know. Where will we find the truth? And we need it.
I don't think I can follow that unless you have some parting words to our listeners and our viewers, both of them, as you say. If you just some closing thoughts here, Roger, before you get back into rehearsal mode.
Well, yeah. What can I say? I can say this to all my brothers and sisters, and they are who support Julian Assange and who believe in all those things that Boris Johnson and Joe Biden don't believe in, mainly love for one another. We have to love each other across international borders, all right? And there are billions of us in the world who do and who understand, as Julian Assange does, which is why he did the great work that he did, that we have to act collectively if we're going to save this small and beautiful planet from the destruction that the tyrants, Joe Biden and Boris Johnson and the rest of them, the Bolsonaros and the rest, would wreak on this planet. So love, we must continue to exchange our love for one another and allow our voice to grow stronger and louder so we reach a crescendo that these arseholes can no longer ignore. That's what I would say.
Does everybody in the bar feel shaky? Lord knows I do. I guess we all feel pretty much the same. Kind of wore out by this crazy fucking zoo. The smell of napalm with the cornflakes. The chafe of killing everything that breathes. Imposing sanctions on the lady down the street. Till she takes the hint and packs her bags and leaves. Come on in here, sister, and set a spell. You are most welcome in the bar. We may seem few, but we are many. Have you been traveling far? The girl who brought you in here is Lakota from Standing Rock, where they made their stand. So from Fort Yates, North Dakota, here's a message for the man. Would you kindly get the fuck off our land?